has, like allowed you to be, and He's like entrusting you for another big things to be done.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. First of all, we need to know who is Anthony Pogo.
Well,
yeah. First of all, I wanted to start with congratulations for the big position that God has, like allowed you to be, and He's like entrusting you for another big things to be done.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. First of all, we need to know who is Anthony Pogo.
Well, my name is Anthony Pogo. I was born in Kajukeji, and when I was less than 1 year old, my parents took me and my siblings to Uganda, and we became refugees there. We came back in 1973. I then lived in South Sudan. Went to school in South Sudan.
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to start with congratulations for the big position that God has, like allowed you to be, and He's like entrusting you for another big things to be done.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. First of all, we need to know who is Anthony Pogo.
Well, my name is Anthony Pogo. I was born in Kajukeji, and when I was less than 1 year old, my parents took me and my siblings to Uganda, and we became refugees there. We came back in 1973. I then lived in South Sudan. Went to school in South Sudan. Went to Kajukeji Intermediate School. In fact, I did my primary education in Loka, where my father was teaching, and then went to secondary school, intermediate school in Kajukeji, came back to Loka for my secondary education, and went to the University of Juba. So that's me until, of course, I graduated and began working for Scripture Union, where I did Christian ministry until the time when I joined Across. Which is when I was elected Bishop of Kajukeji.
You have mentioned that you participated in a Scripture Union, and then this is where we can link Shukuri Yesu as the product of a Scripture Union. But how did that journey started, and how did Pogo became the Pogo that we are seeing today?
Well, one of the things I've said is that I was brought up in a Christian family. I call myself a cradle Anglican, which means that I've always known myself as an Anglican because my father was an Anglican priest. And when I began to understand things, I actually thought that by that I was a Christian, until such a time that someone explained to me and said, no, you don't become a Christian through your parents. You have to make an individual decision yourself. And this is why I learned later this phrase that God only has children. He does not have spiritual grandchildren, which means you do not become a child of God through your parents. You have to take a step of faith by your own accord. And that I think is a very important, significant thing that we need to be aware of. In secondary school, I was very active in Scripture Union activities, and I think I learned a lot of leadership skills because one of the things we did in Scripture Union was leading Bible study. And when you lead Bible study, you lead in a group. I was then appointed to the leadership of Scripture Union. At one time, I was a secretary. Then I became the chair in local secondary school. When I went to university, I was a very active member of the Juba University Bible Study Association. Once again, I found myself in leadership roles. At one time, I was a president, working with other colleagues. So that helped me, not only in my spiritual life, but also helped me in leadership. A number of people saw the quality of leadership in me, and just before I graduated, I was selected with a group of other young people to go to Nairobi for a youth course. Whilst there, the Scripture Union Regional Secretary approached me to consider joining the Ministry of Scripture Union after university. which I did, working with Scripture Union, working with young people. I had a passion of working with young people, and so worked with a number of people. Some of my colleagues included Abuna Anthony, Anthony Jamu and Honorable Anthony Makana, and various other people. And Bishop Onesimo Yugusuk was kind of ahead of us with Pauline Walker. Mm-hmm. And during the Scripture Union conferences, many of the songs that were sung were put together in pieces of paper, in booklets. And when Pauline Walker left South Sudan, I effectively took over. I found a compilation of various books booklets that they had put together called Shukuru Yesu. And I worked with a number of other colleagues, including people like Pastor Gabriel Lona and many others, AIC, ECS, Catholic, and many other people. We did a lot of work compiling, checking the books. The result was that the booklet was then put together, sent to the Sudan Literature Center in Nairobi. It then became the Shukuru Yesu that we use. Mm-hmm. So I carried on doing something that had been started by people like Pauline Walker and Reverend Onisuk, who is now Bishop Onesimo Yugusuk.
Mm-hmm. What could you say about what are the challenges that some churches in South Sudan are facing?
I think I could say that I am blessed because I started my educational training in management, and that prepared me in my role. And the good thing with when you study management is kind of a transferable skill. Mm-hmm. And even after now studying theology, I found that I had been using that in many ways. So even when I became the director of Across, my management training was very, very handy and very, very useful. And when I became bishop, I found it also useful, especially having done an MBA. I found that the management training was very, very useful. I often say that even when you do Holy Communion, there is a lot of things that you can see in terms of even how people come, how you plan about that. You find that transferable skills, in addition to, of course, the theological training that I have had. One of the things that other theological colleges have begun to do is to incorporate management skills, management training in the training of clergy. The reality is that in the current situation, you need all these skills, because when you are in a city like Juba, where you have a huge congregation, as a priest, you need all these skills, or you need people around you who would help you in undertaking your ministry, because as resources come to the church, these resources need to be overseen in a good way. You need to give accountability. You need to give reports. And when you give such accountability, it makes people gain confidence in you, which is one of the things. Working for Across, I was able to bring this also to the church, in the sense that I told my team that I will not get involved in the day-to-day running of the finances. I needed capable people to run the finances, and they then were involved in running all the finances. I could only get involved in bigger decisions. If a huge amount was to be spent, I needed to be made aware. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the details, I left that to others. I also instituted the idea of doing audit. When I first suggested the idea to my colleagues, the team I was working with in the diocese, they said, "No, we don't have money. Why should we do an audit? We don't have money. We don't need a financial audit." I then said, well, unless we do a financial audit, no money will come to us, because many partners these days, they will ask for your financial audit statement. They will ask for your management letter. They want to see what you are doing. And indeed, within 3 years of us doing the audit, we had a partner who asked for our audit report for the last 3 years. And that gave them a lot of confidence, and they gave us huge amount of money, which...
Yes, taking you back to being a refugee and having so many challenges as a refugee in some years back. As we are approaching World Refugee Day in some few days, and Pogo became, from where he was and now, the first South Sudanese to lead the communion. What can you recall from some of the challenges that you have been, facing as a refugee, and how did you overcome those ones? Because that could be also another learning point to some of the guys or some of the people who are still struggling for better tomorrow.
One of the lessons that my father taught us was that we should work hard. And he kept insisting that. And he said it's biblical. In fact, he kept reminding us a scripture that says, he who does not work should not eat. And so hard work had always been part of inculcated in my life, in the lives of my siblings. So I continue to do that. So whatever I do, I put in the best I can. And when, as refugees, you had to also work hard. You have to compete, of course, with the people. One of the challenges of being a refugee is that sometimes you get blamed for things that you haven't done. When crime rates go up, they would say, "Oh, these people who have come from outside, the refugees, you can't get blamed for many of these things." But that sometimes should not worry you. Just carry on, be focused, and many refugee students excel because they know that they have a main focus. There are challenges, but these challenges are challenges of now. If you work hard, you would then overcome, surmount the challenge that you face. So I think one thing I would say is hard work. Don't also look at some of the free things that you get as a refugee as a way of living your life based on these free things. I think in the recent past, the provision of relief food has sometimes also has been a disadvantage to our people. I remember in the 90s, someone was saying, why are they being asked to dig? Has it stopped raining in Geneva? No, that's not very, very, very healthy. Geneva is where the UNHCR is headquartered. And so you are now depending only on the UNHCR. But if you reach a situation like now, recently, actually this week, I was hearing that WFP is suspending its food, distribution in South Sudan because of lack of funds. Then it becomes a challenge. And I think we should, as a nation, find ways in which we work hard. We encourage our people to till the land. There is this false teaching. I don't know where it has come from, where people falsely say that hard work is a punishment. No, hard work is not. We need to work hard. When I was in the diocese, I used to teach people, tilling the land is not a punishment. It's part of what God gave us. Mm-hmm. In fact, the cultivation did not come as a result of the fall. Before the fall, in chapter 2, God made man and gave him to till the land. It is only that after chapter 3, after the fall of man, that one of the punishments was that there will be more. There will be some. It will become harder for you to when you're doing your work. But in reality, tilling the land is not a punishment. It's not part of the fall.
Yeah. Taking you to the point, you've recently, as you've said, that hard work pays. This is what you just in conclusion to what you've said. But it's also necessary that we should work hard so that you can read. But with this mentality of being a refugee and losing hope, many people are going out. So many are have been taken and resettlement has happened to them and a lot of things. But for those who are remaining behind, they feel hopeless. And also that creates a lot of issues and it later it turns to a trauma where, it needs, an attention. How did you overcome as a person those challenges?
Well, I think I've always had hope. I'm more of I'm an optimist. I know there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that's really what is important. And I think whatever we do, let us be positive. Let us know that out of whatever we do, God will bless it. And I think it's important. Even for people who have left for the diaspora, you have to work very hard. And I only got to know this as I was traveling, visiting the South Sudanese diaspora. I found that many of them are working extra hard in order to put food on the table. And so, yes, they have to work extra hard. And so, wherever you are, it's important that we work hard. As I said earlier, this mentality of people depending on others, part of it, I blame it on the long period of war, because we have been at war for a very long time, and we are used to free things. But the reality is that we have to work hard even to build our own nation. And it's very sad, of course, to see that we still depend on our neighboring countries for food that we would grow ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If our infrastructure was improved, we could see that some of the food that we are bringing from Uganda could come from Yambio, could come from Yei, granules could come from lakes. Where all these things. Of course, the challenge of lack of infrastructure is a huge challenge. And if we did this, then you will find that it encourages people to work hard. Fish in some of the rivers in Upper Nile. This with better transport, you could have this transported to Juba. Rather than importing or bringing food from Uganda or the neighboring countries.
Yeah, let me take you back to being a pastor and a bishop that is for Kajukeji Diocese. Okay, as we know that it is just a neighboring Uganda on the other end. What are the challenges? And recently you visited Kajukeji. What could you say about the situation in Kajukeji at the moment?
The current situation is a situation where people are waiting for the implementation of the peace agreement. Now, many of them, of course, are aware that peace has been signed, but some of the insecurity concerns, either as a result of misbehavior of some of the armed groups, or even some of the soldiers, any single person who makes such a thing, the message goes around. As a result, it discourages people from coming back. And the other thing people are waiting for is they are saying, okay, we want to see very, very clear timetable for election. When are the elections happening? When is the census happening? So all these are things that some people are waiting. And it was very big visiting the refugee camps. As I was talking to people, some of them were saying, well, we want to go back. However, we can't, because as you are aware, this week 3 people were killed by the army. How can we go back? Now, I find myself in a situation where I cannot say, well, go back, because indeed that's the reality. Now, it is very sad. It was good to hear from the authorities that they were investigating, that situation. Now, if that is investigated and the person or the people who did that are brought to book, it can be a message encouraging people to say, yes, they are dealing with such insecurity concerns when they happen. Some of the people in the camps are suffering. The food rations have been reduced. Some people have on their own come back to Kajukeji because they felt, I better go and cultivate where I have a huge piece of land that I can cultivate, rather than depending on UNHCR or depending on this small plot of land where I'm not getting enough food for myself. So there are things like this that are important.
Bishop, let me just also take you to. I'm always finishing with like the statement that you've just mentioned. It is hard for some of the refugees to go back at the moment because like you can't tell them go back, and you can't also tell them stay there because like it is an unknown situation where like there is a lot of dilemma. They are in dilemma of either going back or staying in the country, or like waiting for the fate that is not known. The church has its role to play in reconciling people. And as we are seeing in South Sudan on the peace implementation, okay, as an observer, what could you say concerning the implementation of peace in South Sudan as per now?
From where I am, I hear some of the very good progress that has been made on the implementation of the peace agreement, and I think it's important that continues. It's also important that the various groups that have signed the agreement also play their role. One of the things I keep hearing people say is the graduation of the troops that were in a cantonment, and I think that's a tangible thing that needs to happen. The other thing is bills in the parliament. The parliament needs to speed up bills that would help, with very, very clear things that are outlined in the peace agreement. Election timetable, registration, having a census, looking at constituencies. Now, can we do many of these things within the time frame? I don't know. It's not for me to say this, but those are things that, if they are done, it gives confidence to the people, the average person. One of the things I have said is that all the parties who have signed the agreement, they have a role to ensure that they implement the peace agreement, and they should not implement the agreement selectively. Implement it as it is. Don't implement the parts that you like. Implement it. The reason why it was signed is for a reason, so that peace returns to our country. Security arrangements, undertake that so that it gives confidence to the people. Look at some of the things to do with accountability in the sense of where has our money gone? What is happening with salaries of civil servants? All these things need to be undertaken, and it gives confidence to the people. And I think it's also important that all people speak positively rather than always looking at the negative things. And as I said earlier, I am always a person of hope. So let's hope and believe that our government and all those who have signed the agreement will play their role in implementing the agreement. The church and civil society continues to remind the government of what they should do. And by so doing, the church is playing its prophetic role in speaking, truth to power.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bishop. That will also take us to, what could you say to our African leaders as somebody who is in a leadership position, and also as somebody who also has been playing a role in reconciling some of the people with themselves and with God in the other hand. What could you say to African leaders?
I think it's important that our leaders take governance very, very, very seriously, and governance in the way of ensuring that they play their role governing as per expectation. Of course, we talk of democracy. I'm not talking of democracy as defined by the West, but democracy where we have said this is what we should be doing. We have election terms. We keep to that. That's important because that gives people confidence. There are people who always look at ways in which they gain from the suffering of the people. That's unfortunate. And whatever